Hey, what's up, Exit the Matrix family? Bob here. Hey guys, thanks for joining me on this morning talk. So yesterday I did a video, What is Consciousness, part 1. So we're going to pick back up with that. It was a pretty short video. I started about halfway through my drive. I had some stuff going on. But anyways, so I think it's pretty firmly established at this point. If you follow NDEs, if you deep dive into NDEs, that at the point of trauma, at the point of the body, stopping its function, the heart stop, brain shut down, whatever have you. Typically at that point, the spirit leaves the body, or what I would call is the consciousness or the conscious energy leaves the body at that point. And so I think it's pretty well established at this point. I mean, considering that, there's thousands and thousands of these accounts, and many of them have been studied by top doctors and scientists around the world. And some have made it their life's, work. Some of them are like heart surgeons and stuff, but they also interview people that, have NDEs, like their own patients and stuff, on the side of doing their work. And so they're already controlling the factors at that point, and they understand when people flatline and such. So they have all the documentation. And then they get the accounts from these people, and they understand that in the situation that person was in, that they couldn't be having these experiences, like seeing what's going on in the room around them, when their eyes are closed and they're in a coma state, or they're under a heavy anesthesia or whatever. So even seeing things going on in rooms, other rooms of the hospital and such. People have verified their NDEs with situations like that. So, look, the naysayers are going to just say, oh, they were on drugs, they were hallucinating, this or that. But I think it's pretty firmly established at this point, especially if you actually deep dive in NDEs, which most people don't, that the science is there and the evidence is there. That the consciousness is separate from the body. The consciousness is not a product of the brain and the body. The consciousness is separate from the body, and the consciousness is always is. Okay, folks? Like, this is pretty firmly established, at least in NDE accounts. Think about this. When you go to sleep at night, you're going to sleep because your body's like a battery. Your body needs to recharge, right? It needs that downtime to recharge its systems, to gain energy back, to, rest parts, right? Give them a break from operating so they don't get overused. But yet, the consciousness never shuts off. The consciousness is always conscious. So what does consciousness do when it's in a body that has to rest and go to sleep and shut down, like a computer, like putting it in shutdown mode, right? Well, the consciousness creates its own thought forms, its own experiences to keep it busy until the body's back awake, till the body's able to be revived, and and the consciousness shifts back to the perspective of the body at that point. But the consciousness creates its own thought forms to experience when the body's shut down. See, your consciousness, folks, never takes a break. It never stops. Awareness. Even some of you that say, oh, I never dream. Trust me, everybody dreams. You just might dream on deeper levels that when you wake up, there's no awareness that you were dreaming, because maybe you were so deep. Or maybe you were at a very light level. But trust me, the consciousness is always aware, regardless. Now, are there times that the consciousness just slips into the void? And some people that think they don't have, they have like dreamless like sleep, maybe it's because their spirit has slipped into the void, and so they're just experiencing the void, and so they're considering that like it's like they're just out cold, that there's no dreaming and that the consciousness shuts down, but that's not it. So I don't know, some things to think about here. Interesting stuff, right? I don't think people think about these things. I don't think people think about it. Sorry, it's kind of a weird double negative there, but anyways, I don't think a lot of people think about that the consciousness never stops. It never loses awareness. It seems that you do when you sleep, but when you think about it, the consciousness is always creating experiences. And isn't it interesting, folks, that when you wake up from your dream world to the real world, you realize, unless you have a really intense lucid dream, right, that feels almost real, which makes you wonder what those really are. For the most part, when you wake up in the morning, you realize that it was just a dream, and that it, like, now you're in more of a real state, a more consciously aware state, right? Because now you're conscious of your body and everything else. But you know what's also interesting, folks? People that have the NDEs, when they pop out of their body, and then one thing that's interesting, just to inject in here, folks, is people oftentimes say that they look down at their body and they realize, wow, that's not me. It's like it's what I was. It was the identity that I take on when I'm in the body, and I feel like it's me then. But when I'm outside of the body, it's just a vessel. It's not me. There's no emotional connection or anything. But what's even more powerful is that people say that their awareness, it's like waking up into the real experience, the real world. When you wake up, when you leave the body, it's like another layer of like waking up. They say it's like, from sleep to awakeness in the body, it feels like you're, from one level of consciousness to a more real consciousness level. But they also say when you pop out of the body, that it's more real than the being in the body. That your senses are massively amplified. You have a 360-degree view. In fact, your vision is so insane that it can operate like a telescope or a magnifying glass, or a what do you call it? A microscope. You can zoom in on the smallest thing, and you can zoom into like far away, like reach. You can see far, that your normal eyes have no ability to do. And 360-degree view and awareness, and even the perspective to see yourself in the third perspective, and to see through other people's, through their awareness, and even through their emotions. Like, and people can say you can even see colors and taste colors, and it's like your senses are like just ultimately amplified when you're outside of the body. So it's quite obvious that the body is a limiting factor on the spirit. The body is, so to speak, like, okay, look at it this way, folks. I think this is a good comparison. Like, let's say you're gonna go, and I don't care if it's possible or not. We're just using this as an example. Well, instead of doing the space thing, we'll do the underwater thing. Okay, so people that do deep underwater diving, like commercial diving and stuff, right? Like maybe they work for like oil rigs and they got to go down and repair stuff underwater. Have you ever seen, folks, what they got to put on the gear to go deep, like diving? They look like spacesuits. They're like these high pressurized, insanely thick and heavy, diving sets, right? That are intricately connected and stuff. But when you're in that suit, you're heavily limited. I mean, you can't feel nothing because you got those thick ass gloves on and those weighted boots, and you're looking through a little tiny glass like window, right? Because you have to have a highly pressurized, or you have to have a suit that could be down in highly pressurized, situation. Because the deeper in the water you go, the higher the pressure is. So you don't want a bunch of glass and stuff that could explode or implode, right? Or I guess it'd be more implode underwater. You want just one tiny little, it's probably like a super thick, specialized glass, right? Against high pressure. And then steel, essentially, you're encased in. But man, think about that. When you have that suit on, imagine how limited your functions are, right? I mean, you're down to like a small little window of vision. You lost most of your sense of feel and touch. Your body has to be regulated, your temperatures with the suit. I mean, you're just heavily limited. And that's what it's like, folks, to be in the human body. See, you don't realize how limiting the human body is until you're outside of the human body. And people say you can see colors that you've never seen on Earth. Now, it's not that those colors aren't on Earth. It's that your vision is limited to a certain band of light spectrum, right? And some people see light spectrum differently. Like some people can't see certain colors and such. Maybe some people can see the edges of those other colors that others can't. I don't know. I'm just saying it's a possibility. Now, some people, have, stronger, senses of smell and other stuff. But ultimately, the human body is also a limiting factor, folks, just like that deep sea suit is. Are you seeing where I'm going with all of this? When you shed the body, you're in full awareness. And another thing that is talked about, and we touched on this on the video yesterday, is that when you're outside of the body, you get a download of all the information of the known universe. It's like you're no longer limited by the computing capacity of your human brain, which is a computer. It's a operating machine, okay, folks? It's the control machine for the vessel, the body. It's not the consciousness like materialists, or now they call themselves naturalists, right? We'll admit to. It's the operating machine. It's what allows the spirit to immerse itself and operate the body. And it oftentimes has a lot of autopilot functions. Because look, folks, you don't want your consciousness having to control every little function of the body. Most of your body functions on autopilot without you. It's designed that way so that it can free up your consciousness to explore in other ways, through the brain and such, right? Through the senses. But you don't have to be consciously thinking about your heart pumping and all that. It just automatically, it's already being operated by the brain. It's on autopilot, okay? Now you can consciously breathe, right? Or you just automatically breathe. Now when you consciously breathe, it can release DMT and stuff, and it can actually take you to a different mindset, right? With like meditation and breathing practices. But normally your brain just operates that function, that you can take over the controls. Think about it, folks. Breathing is a perfect example of this. The brain operating it, or the consciousness. When the brain's operating it, it's just automatically running, and it's kind of like on a set timer, right? Or like a specific clicks, or what's the word I'm trying to think? Not clicks, but well, it's like the ocean, right? It's the waves in and out, right? It's like measured. Breathing. right? It's a type of waveform. It's just with the airs, the air, it breathe it in, breathe it out, right? The oxygen in, CO2 and carbon, dioxide and other byproducts, out, just similar to a tree. But instead of bringing in CO2 and putting oxygen out, it brings in oxygen and puts CO2 out. A lot of our functions of the body are similar to how nature operates, which tells me that the body was designed with parts of all nature around us encoded in the design. But look, the difference between the brain and the consciousness. The brain automatically operates that breathing, so you don't have to think about it through your day. But when you go to meditate or do a breathing practice, or maybe you're doing like underwater breathing, consciously, like diving and stuff. Like I swim a lot, so sometimes you take over that breathing, right? Because your lungs want you to breathe when you're underwater, but no, you consciously hold the lungs down or stop the lungs, and you hold your breath, right, while you're swimming. If you didn't consciously do that, your body would continue to breathe. It breathe in the water, and you drown. So there are times when the consciousness takes over the controls, right? From autopilot to manual pilot. And I'm sure there's plenty of other things examples we can bring up about the body. Folks, the body is a biological machine, okay? So this consciousness that can be separate from the body, that is more advanced outside of the body, that's limited by the body. And we still have people that think the brain generates consciousness. It's really amazing that there's people this ignorant. And they typically tend to be probably majority on the left. They have this like weird view of like nihilism, like just like, when they die, they're just a speck of dust, there is no afterlife. They're so ignorant, they don't even realize that every freaking day they're playing a game between the consciousness and the brain, and that they're separate. Now they work together in unison, but they're still separate. Folks, the government knows this, okay? What was it, Project Stargate? Or Project Looking Glass? No, not Looking Glass, sorry. I think it was Project Stargate. And then there's been some other, even MK Ultra tactics and such. The government, especially intelligence agency and military intelligence, they've been delving into all these secrets for a long time. The government knows, folks, unequivocally, that consciousness is separate from the brain. And how do they know that? Well, they had specific spy programs that operated on that knowledge, where they would have people, super psychics, you could call them, people with kind of advanced psychic abilities, that they would do remote viewing so they could spy on the Russians and such. This is a well-known program, documented, and you can listen to the interviews of the guys that were literally these they called them like these super like psyche soldiers and stuff. In fact, the movie, folks, The Men Who Stare at Goats, is about this like group of guys that were these psychic soldiers for the military, for intelligence, that were doing the remote viewing. Okay? And they were doing other experiments on consciousness and the psyche. And they fully understood that consciousness can travel outside of the body, that it can have an OBE experience. And they documented all this stuff, folks. They had techniques that allowed for OBEs, controlled OBEs, okay? Where the body the consciousness can leave the body and explore and map outside of the body and spy. So I think it's time, folks, to stop acting ignorant about this. Okay? The truth is that you are pure consciousness, having a human experience in a human avatar, body, or vessel. And this is another thing, folks, that I find interesting. And this is kind of flies in the face of the new age, like, teachings, right? Like, oh, the only way to nirvana and all that's to rejoin source and to give up your ego, right? It's always give up your ego, Why do they always tell you you should have no ego? Because they want you to be a spineless pussy, okay? Let's be honest. Now, I'm not saying you should be super egotistical and like an egomaniac. You should find balance, folks. But the ego is your personality. It's your own unique fractal of the mind of God, okay? You were created, or you were fractalized off the main source to be your own unique consciousness. Just like your body is unique, your DNA is unique, your DNA coding, your consciousness is unique. And so you don't want to dissolve the ego, folks. Now, I would probably have a lot of people argue with me on this, and maybe I'm even arguing with myself a little bit on this. But what's interesting to note is when people have NDEs and they're outside of the body, they say that they're still the same consciousness. It's them. It's still their same thoughts, and they think the same still. It's not like all of a sudden they're like, who am I? What am I doing here, right? Like, what's going on here? Where am I at? Like, yeah, they may have some questions like that, but they still know it's them. They still have a unique consciousness, and they're aware that they're a unique consciousness. So I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong on the whole ego thing, but all this Eastern, philosophy and all that's always telling you, kill your ego, get rid of your ego. And it's like, but your ego's you. The ego is your unique consciousness. And you carry that ego from the body outside of the body, okay? Now, I don't know, folks. Maybe when you cross back the veil, you completely, you never come back, right? They always say there's like kind of a gulf or a bridge or a doorway or some kind of crossing over point when people have NDEs, that they're told once they cross that part, they can never come back to the body. Now, what happens after that? I don't know, folks. Maybe there you do merge back with source. I don't know. Or maybe you go home and we literally have a whole another civilization outside of this one on a higher dimension and a higher vibratory state, but it still is designed kind of like we live now. I mean, maybe what I found interesting is a lot of people will say that what they find in heaven compared to earth is the same buildings. Like, there'll be, they say a lot of times over there'll be megalithic buildings, but they're a lot of them are done in Egyptian and Greek style, which is weird, right? Like, what? In heaven there's Greek libraries and stuff? Yeah, that's what people say, but they're way more massive and grand than anything found on earth. Now, were those created just purely by consciousness manifested, or was it like a collective consciousness that builds those? Or I don't know, folks, what that realm looks like. But then that makes you question, then why are we here? What is this? Are we explorers? Maybe we have always been part of a higher dimensional civilization, and things are different there. You're in pure conscious form there, and maybe you manifest instantly there. It operates different, but it's almost like Earth is like a crude copy of that realm, which would make sense, right? People always say a lot of inventors will say I really didn't come up with this. It downloaded into my consciousness. Einstein has alluded to that. Tesla alluded to that. Leonardo da Vinci. A lot of these top scientists, even Nostradamus, right? The technique he went into to have his visions. A lot of these guys, they say that they feel like they got a download. The idea was downloaded into them. Now, where would it come? Well, perhaps that's how we build here, okay, folks? The information gets downloaded from the higher dimension, and then we're building kind of a copy of that world that we came from, of those cities and those buildings that are in the higher dimension where we come from, the real world we come from. And then that we're explorers in this third dimension, and we're trying to build like a copy of that in a lower dimension of more what you'd call time and matter, physical, realm, right? Maybe in that realm, everything is the illusion of well, I mean, if you look at it that way, I mean, I guess everything's an illusion of physical here too, right? Because really, when you break everything down to the smallest, part, it's just energy particles, right? So there really is no true solid in this realm, just the illusion of solid, right? Of form and stuff. So maybe in the higher realms, it's even more illusionary, but maybe it's stronger because it's built on a higher level of manifestation and consciousness, right? Without the limitations of the body, right? Maybe in that realm, we can just build whatever with the mind. You don't even need to do physical labor or anything. I don't know. It's all mysteries, folks. We're just talking, right? But I think what I've been talking about at least paints the picture and the understanding pretty clearly that your consciousness, your ego, who you think is truly you, is not of this realm. It's what you brought into this realm. And when you leave, you take it back with you, because that's who you are. That's what you are. You're pure consciousness. So I don't know, folks. It's all really interesting. So we got to keep talking about this, though. I'm going to do a little more research. This is a Saturday. This weekend I'll do a little more research into consciousness and stuff, and see if there's some angles I'm missing and some more information, because we're going to definitely do a part 3. But I don't know. I mean, look, folks, this isn't a design talk, okay? We're just bantering, right? But, I'm trying to give you guys some things to think about outside of the box. Because when you start wrapping your mind around this, it starts blowing your mind, quite honestly, And then you can start thinking about, well, then how can I tap into the pure power of my consciousness, but while I'm in this realm, even though I'm in this limited sensory body, right? Human body. And to a degree, my spirit is limited even by the operating system, the brain, right? And we all know that people have different strengths of operating systems. Like some people have really low IQ brains, and some have high IQ. Some are autistic. Some are, there's different, some people are like geniuses, right? And so not all brains operating systems are the same, right? Now that consciousness, though, however, even though it's limited by the capacities of the brain, I still think it can expand way above and beyond what the brain is capable of. But there is some kind of a symbiotic relationship between the brain and the consciousness. So I think what we'll do is we'll delve into that in the next talk, at least part of it, and then I'll do some more research. But we'll get into the pineal gland and what that means, as far as what the connection of spirit and brain, right? And yeah, because every operating or every vehicle control module needs a captain seat, right? Like your car or an airplane or a boat, you still got to have a seat, right? For the person or the consciousness operating the machine, right? Yeah, we'll keep delving into this, folks. It's going to be fun. So I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts too on this, okay? Make sure you're commenting. Make sure you're sharing the videos. Make sure you're liking the videos. Wow. I mean, I haven't had a video reach over 100 people forever on here. When I had my Exit the Matrix Facebook page and I could drop my links there, most of my videos hardly were ever under 1,000 views. So that just shows you, now that I'm switched over 100% to YouTube, they limit the crap out of this channel, okay, folks? And look, this is stuff that, yeah, there's some channels talking about this stuff, but most aren't, okay? What are you going to want to go watch mukbangs, people eating food, go watch makeup tutorials? Oh, yeah, those all get blown out of the water, right, with the reach and everything, like, oh, my God, a dude putting on makeup. Oh, let's make this guy hit 10 million in his first month, and he's a freaking, living on high off the hog at that point, making, $10,000 a month off YouTube, just off a couple stupid makeup tutorials or some, right? But we're here talking about the deepest, level of thinking, like literally, like the consciousness, like the interaction of, in this realm, the, multiple dimensions, like the quantum field, like, our origins, our creation, mankind, ancient history. We talk about all kinds of crazy subjects on here, but they're like very far reaching and very deep subjects. No reach. Lucky to get 50 people a video getting reach for. So, and I get it, folks. I push buttons. I upset the left. I upset the right. I know. But I'm honest about it. Hey, I mean, look, it's good sometimes to get perspective from people that are different from you, okay? There's this one NDE channel I listen to a lot. It's a Christian-based NDE channel. And a lot of it's propaganda and BS that they push on it, okay? They're always pushing the hell narrative and the, rapture narrative and all these, which are all both man-made. They're not even in the Bible. And, but I still listen to them because I want a perspective different from my own. I want to know, how do Christians view NDEs, right? And what is the propaganda that even these paid apologists that are being paid to run these channels to try to sway Christians' minds and to recapture the grip on like everything spiritual, right? Because I get this weird thing with like people in religion. They feel like anything that's spiritual is the domain of religion and it shouldn't be outside of religion, organized religion, right? And so you have these paid groups that, look, you know what it's all about, folks? It's a business. And what's the business? Getting people into buildings and donating money or giving money, right? And then that church can turn around and buy more land and build more buildings, right? And a lot of these preachers are on 6-figure incomes and pension plans and everything, okay, folks? It's a business. And we're living in an age where young people aren't going to church. So what do they got to do? A lot of these NGO groups were Catholic and other like type of religious organizations that were funneling illegal immigrants into the United States. Now, why were they doing that? Why would Catholic NGO groups backed by Catholic church money do that? Well, because they're bringing up Hispanics that are Catholic. Think about it. Filling the church pews, bringing more money into the church. It's a business, folks. My God. Like literally, we have churches pushing the invasion of this country. Nobody wants to talk about that. But, I'm the bad guy because I'm questioning the Old Testament. Because I'm pointing out the clear fact that the Old Testament God is literally the devil of this realm. He's the Sumerian god Enlil, the commander of earth. That's why he's called in the Bible the Lord of hosts. What do you think that means, folks? The Lord of armies. That's what a host is. It's an army. He's a warlord, a war god. And y'all worshiping him, saying, he's the Trinity, he's the Father, he's the blah, 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 blah. And he literally has the persona of a humanoid, right? Walking around, strolling through the garden. And then on another part, he takes on the persona of a volcano, right? The whole Moses story, that's about a volcano, folks. They were worshiping a volcano. My God, look at that whole story. About God's thundering on top of the mountain in the clouds and lightning and all this stuff. Like, oh my God, look at what God's doing. Well, yeah, because it's a freaking volcano. They're worshiping a volcano, saying it's God, okay? And it just so happens that Yahweh was a volcano god in the Canaanite pantheon. I kid you not, folks. Like, look, it's such a clown show, okay? Anyways, hey, I'm going to go ahead and go in. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and I'll talk to you later, okay?